The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has called for that immediate public vote following the resignation of the Prime Minister yesterday. Good morning to the Labour leader. He joins us live now, exclusively on Good Morning Britain. Right, imagine tomorrow, for some reason, there's a general election, and my goodness, the things that have been happening in politics in the last few days, stranger things have happened. What would a Labour government do?
Well, the first thing that we would do is to stabilise the economy. And that means setting out a clear plan with clear costing, which is what we've done, and to make absolutely clear that when it comes to institutions like the Bank of England and the OBR, we respect those institutions because we've got utter chaos at the moment. And, you know, having a revolving door with more chaos, you know, giving the next Conservative want to be their sort of experiment as leader of the party is not going to change that. So what we would do would bring in stability, have a serious plan for the future, serious plan for jobs, for living standards, to get us through the cost of living crisis. But the contrast really is this, you know, carry on with this utter chaos or have stability under a Labour government.
Okay.
And I think that's a choice that ought to be put to the British public because they've been damaged by this. The economy is tanking. People are having to pay more on their mortgages. And we've got this ridiculous situation now of yet another Prime Minister coming to try their hand.
Let's ask about a couple of specifics. Would you cut public spending?
We don't want to cut public spending because, you know, a month ago, Susanna, we weren't even having a discussion about spending cuts. If you'd been interviewing me a month ago, that wasn't a question any of us were discussing. We're discussing that question because this government crashed the economy with their kamikaze mini budget. And I ran a public service for 5 years, and I know that our public services, our NHS, I say they're on their knees. They say to me they're on their face. So we don't want to do that, but we do want to take prudent choices about the economy going forward. We've got a plan.
So how are you going to fund public spending if you don't want to cut it? Are you going to borrow more money, which of course is something that the markets aren't that keen on, or are you going to raise taxes?
Well, Susanna, what we've said, if you take the energy price freeze, we all agree that those prices have got to be frozen over the winter. What we've said is that the oil and gas companies that have been making excess profits they didn't expect to make, should pay their fair way. This government says, no, 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 we're not going to touch that money. We're going to take it, we're going to put it all on borrowing, put it on the never, never. And in the end, people watching this programme will be paying through their taxes. So we say there are other ways of raising that money. But, you know, Susanna, we do have to reflect on the fact that we've got a government that has done huge damage to our economy, huge damage to our reputation.
Look, so Keir Starmer, we haven't got long with you, and I don't want this just to be an interview about taking pot shots at the government.
No, I understand.
Because I think that the polls show that you, if a general election was held right now, would win it. So people want to know what a Labour government would do. You say you would maintain public spending, and you would do that through windfall taxes on the energy companies. Is that really going to pay to maintain public spending? You would have to either borrow more or put up taxes, wouldn't you? Well,
there are other changes that we would make, Susanna. Let me take another example. The non-dom tax rules where people can pay their tax to another country even though they're working here. We would abolish that and that would raise money. There's charitable status for private schools. We've said we would change that and use that money for other purposes. So there are things we can do to make our taxation system fairer. But underlying this, Susanna, there's another challenge, which is the real lasting problem of the last 12 years of this government is we haven't had economic growth. So what we've set out is a plan for growth, which is built on the fact that it's working people that create the wealth in our country. So we've got a plan that drives that forward, a fairer, greener Britain, and we've got a plan for clean power by 2030. That will deliver lower bills, it will deliver job security, it will deliver security so we're not exposed to the international market, and it will go a long way to dealing with our obligations in relation to the climate. So we've got not only strong fiscal rules, how we will spend money wisely, but also a plan for growth for our economy. That's the single most important thing at the moment.
Let me ask you about a couple of other things. When the mini-budget was announced, there was a 1p cut in the basic rate of income tax, and Labour immediately backed that. Would you still?
Well, we backed that because we've always said that we want lower taxes on working people. It's the same reason that we voted not to have the national insurance rise earlier in the year. Obviously, when it comes to the election, we'll have to look at the state of the economy. That principle still applies, but I don't know when we're going to have an election. I don't know what the state of the economy will be. But we will set out, what we have done, Susanna, is...
OK, so you wouldn't be able to commit to that at this stage. What about the pensions triple lock, raising pensions in line with wages or 2.5%, or inflation, which is currently just over 10%, whichever is higher? Would you stay committed to that?
Yes, we have backed that. And obviously, again, we'll have to look at everything as we go into the election. But we have backed that. But, Susanna, the idea that we are having to make decisions about cuts because this government has tanked the economy tells you exactly why we need a general election, why we need to usher in a stable Labour government so we can get our finances back under control. And the thing that spooked the markets was just a lack of confidence in the government that had a mini budget that wasn't funded, that didn't use the OBR and the other mechanisms that give stability to the market. With an incoming Labour government, you would have that confidence in the markets, that stability. That's the single most important thing, because everybody can see the damage that's been done in the last few weeks by the kamikaze approach that's been taken. You will get the complete opposite from a Labour government, a serious, stable government. We don't have to have government like this. We can't. I think for everybody watching, I want to assure them we don't have to go on like this. There is an alternative.
Let me ask you about something which is causing some instability, and that is strike action. What is your stand on the strikes which are currently taking place? And one in particular, the RCN is balloting its members, nurses, about strike action. They want a pay increase 5% above inflation. Do you back that?
Well, I completely understand why they're making that ask. Wages have been very low for a long time. They're working really hard and prices are going through the roof. I don't want to see a strike. They don't want to go on a strike. What I want to see is that resolved. But I do understand that many working people, whether it's nurses or others, are really, really up against it now. And of course, they want negotiations to increase their wages. In the end, of course...
if you came into power and you were in charge of their wages, would you grant it?
Well, there's a mechanism to decide what that would be, and we would let that run its course. But I empathise, I understand why nurses are in the situation that they're in, why they're considering industrial action. But I don't want a strike to go ahead. They don't want a strike to go ahead.
Would you back it, and would you grant it?
Well, there's a mechanism for dealing with their pay, and I would want that to run its course. Of course I would. But, you know, the government has put us in this position, and we need to get out of this position. The only way in the end to get out of this position is to deal with the cost of living crisis, because with inflation through the roof, prices through the roof, the economy tanking because of this government, we need the stability that settles this situation, because otherwise, you know, pay resolution in, you know, a few months' time is meaningless if inflation's taken prices through the roof in 6 months or 12 months. We need a longer-term answer to this.
OK. And finally, the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, has said that Liz Truss should turn down the £115,000 that she's entitled to as a serving Prime Minister. Would you join that call, or do you think she deserves it after 44 days in office?
No, she should turn it down. I think that's the right thing to do. She's done 44 days in office. She's not really entitled to it. She should turn it down and not take it.
All right, Sir Keir Starmer, we know we need to let you go, but thank you very much indeed.